Hello everyone, this is your buddy and your pal, Aewch, and welcome to the AewchCast.
Let's take you back to the days when DDT was safe.
And this is Circulating the Tapes, the brand new Mystery Science Theater 3000 Watchalong Podcast on the AewchCast. Yes, we have enough material to split off into a brand new-ish show. Now, if you know me, one of my favorite shows of all time is Mystery Science Theater 3000. And I have just now realized that that's the show I should really cover as a podcast. I have all of the official DVD releases. I have the episodes that will probably never get an official release due to copyright restrictions. I have the Netflix and Gizmoplex seasons on Blu-ray, which may or may still not be available online. I have everything. Honestly, there is only one true movie that isn't on DVD or any official MST3K platforms, but it is on the internet database, so we can do everything. Plus, there's a surprising lack of podcasts covering the show. There's a little handful, but they have probably not released any new episodes in about 3 years, and that's the gap I'm looking to fill. So, if you are a regular listener to the podcast, you know I give my rating on a scale from 1 to 10. However, we are now going to add the gimmick of ranking all 209 episodes. Here's the thing. There is a list compiled by the backers of the Bring Back MST3K campaign for the Netflix revival, which would determine the top 10 episodes played during the Turkey Day Marathon in 2016. And I gotta say, it's pretty much exactly what you would expect. Manos, space mutiny, yada yada yada. But when pod people and cave dwellers are in the top 10, you start convincing yourself that you're not the outlier and everyone else is wrong. The list will be my opinion alone, and it might change a couple of times once we start getting more movies into it, but for everything MST3K, this is a hard reset. We are watching everything. I did do some AewchCasts years ago that grouped a couple of the movies together. Each of those movies are going to get their own episode. The only one that's getting a pass right now is Racket Girls, as we watched that one earlier this year. It's going to get grandfathered in on the list later in the episode, so it's about as current as we can get. So let's get right into this new show, and we are starting off with a doozy. Like I mentioned earlier, there are episodes that people always call their favorites, which are usually more the over-the-top episodes, like previously mentioned Manos or Hobgoblins, things of that nature. I would call today's episode the thinking man's favorite episode. It's a little more subtle. Today, we are talking about I Accuse My Parents.
Your feature presentation is a film called I Accuse My Parents. You figure it out. Enjoy it with the short about truck farming. We're gonna have to answer to the Chippendale Corporation for this, Frank.
Airing September 4th, 1993, episode 507, season 5, episode 7, that's how they do it. Available on the MST3K Singles Collection on DVD, or available for free on the official MST3K YouTube channel. The link to the episode is in the description, so you can watch along and participate. The episode covers this 1944 film that falls into the genre of cult classic without the cult or the classic. As far as I can tell, this is a lot like those propaganda films, warning the dangers of drugs or reckless behavior, except it forgot which one it really wanted to tackle, so it ends up just being a pretty harmless movie. The only real fun fact was the fact that the production company covered all of the costs for the movie to be sent overseas so that deployed troops could watch the film. What a treat. I think any troop would take latrine duty over watching this movie. I think I myself would beat Bob Hope's ass with his own golf club if he thought this movie was going to improve morale. But first, we have a short called The Truck Farmer from Encyclopedia Britannica Films, which is the offshoot of the book company. It is an informative piece about how transportation is important for crops in the South to get to the North. This must have been a movie intended for high school social studies classes, because anyone younger would just yawn their way through the reel. There are two things I wanted to point out about this short. One, they make the point that migrant workers with work visas cross the border to work in the fields. That's completely fine. What the movie doesn't say is the fact that all of the Mexicans look completely miserable harvesting carrots and counting beans. It's not like they want to be there either. There's nary a smile cracked by anyone who's just been beat down by the sun for 12 hours a day.
Here in the Rio Grande Delta, Mexican citizens who cross the border on temporary work permits help.
They make it sound so nice.
I'm from Canada. What am I doing here?
A preteen is put to work. Her beauty will soon fade.
And two, more shockingly, there's the complete overboard use of pesticides on all of the crops. There's so much pesticide sprayed, you get secondhand cancer just from watching. And it's not a small amount either. The crops get drenched in it. It's like walking through an automatic car wash that's set on the deluxe option. It's just everywhere.
Chemical cultivation is often used. Specially selected chemicals that destroy weeds without injuring vegetables are sprayed in the field.
Hooray for chemicals!
The movie follows the story of Jimmy, a high school student who wins an essay contest. Yeah, high school, by the way, of 25-year-old. The essay is along the lines of having a swell home life and dependable parents, a lot of keeping up appearances for the 1940s. This is all basically fantasy fulfillment for Jimmy, because Jimmy's parents suck. The dad is a bit of a gambler, which I really don't take that much offense to, but again, it's the 1940s. He's a possible womanizer, but it's never really made clear in the movie, and pretty nonchalant about hating everyone in his house. The mom is a drunk, which is about as far as her character goes, and the house itself is just a tinderbox ready to pop at a moment's notice. When the scene that introduces all of these characters has all of them getting hits of scotch or brandy or whatever the hell alcohol of choice is, it's just a healthy home life for everyone. Jimmy tells his dad he won an essay contest. His dad immediately gives him $10 and then leaves. Man, I wish I had that deal as a teenager. Jimmy tries to have a more involved relationship with his mother, as most of his essay was about family life. So the school organizers, for some reason, want to meet Jimmy's mom, except she's already plastered by the time she gets to the gymnasium, so Jimmy immediately escorts her out. Look, parents are supposed to embarrass the children. Maybe not by catching a buzz, but you get the idea. To be fair, I did hang out with a group of friends one time back in high school, and instead of doing teenage things, we talked to the 3 drunkest people I've ever seen up to that point in my entire life, for what felt like hours. Yeah, high school wasn't great for me. If you're a longtime listener to the podcast, you already know this. But that's the weird thing about this movie. There's only 2 scenes that even take place in the school, and then it's just gone 20 minutes into the movie. They don't even show Jimmy graduating. It's just like an embarrassing PTA meeting, smash cut to Jimmy looking for full-time work. Hell, he could have dropped out due to embarrassment for all we know. Jimmy starts working as a shoe salesman, where he meets Kitty Reed, the film's main love interest. I mean, it's not even 5 minutes into their meeting, and Jimmy is touching feet. I'm not sure what base that is, but it is skin-on-skin contact. They hit it off, he goes to her apartment, they talk for hours. Jimmy's a bit of a smooth operator. Granted, he's lying about everything. But that's the thing, people try to show off character, even if they are completely fake. Like, pity sex wasn't even a thing until the 70s, just because no one tried it. Now, Kitty is a singer for a club, but she ain't no Jessica Rabbit. She ain't even Lola Bunny. Are kids nowadays going to understand why rabbits are associated with sexuality, or without Playboy is that thread just completely gone? This part of the film goes into one of my favorite things that is now completely gone, supper clubs. Supper clubs were basically a one-stop shop for an entire evening's entertainment. You go out, you get dinner, you get drinks, there's a band, there's dancing, there's a highlighted singer, maybe there's a comedian. Granted, most of these seem to be fronts for organized crime, but it is an important part of stand-up comedy's history. Although the weird thing in this movie is that they go from a real high-class establishment, big band, fancy dress attire, to a club that's modeled after hee-haw? Honestly, everyone who works there is in overalls and straw hats. It's a curious choice. Granted, not the worst work uniform I've ever seen. As our host at Medieval Times told us, if I have to wear these tights, you have to wear those crowns. Speaking of mob ties, this introduces Mr. Blake, the owner of the club Kitty works at, and also her main squeeze. It's really strange that Jimmy doesn't recognize this fact. When you're on a date with someone and another dude shoehorns their way in, you need to stand your ground or find a damn clue. Mr. Blake lets it slide because he wants Jimmy to start working for him. Jimmy starts spending all of his money on Kitty until apparently he has absolutely nothing left, just a completely drained bank account. I have heard this from so many married people, but it's easy for them to say they get to touch feet. So he signs on with Mr. Blake as a driver, basically grabbing packages like it was Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Until he becomes a getaway driver for the heist that goes wrong. Then, all of a sudden, Jimmy realizes, he's in the mob, he threatens to crack and call the police, he gets mugged by Mr. Blake's boys, and then he dashes out of town. And this entire time, his parents completely stay out of it. Like, his best girl breaks his heart on the behest of Mr. Blake. He's part of a crime syndicate, he's crashing and burning, and his parents don't lift a finger to help out with anything. There's a scene where Jimmy comes home to a giant swinging party at his house. His parents are both basically showing off their infidelity, but then they decide, hey, the beach house has enough booze for the weekend, let's get going, everyone. Again, my kind of parenting. Jimmy basically becomes a vagrant. He goes missing for a couple of weeks, according to some of the dialogue. He basically plans to rob a burger joint for the money, but ends up helping out the owner. And for some reason, the film really thinks this burger guy is enough of a character that influences the plot, but that's just by happenstance. I mean, Jiminy Cricket had a bigger influence on Pinocchio. Granted, the bug didn't own his own business and give away goods and services. I mean, free meals, a shed to live in, basically it's all I want. But I think Jimmy gets a change in heart as he decides to go back home to deal with Mr. Blake. Again, the movie makes you think it's the weird fry cook that made him change his ways. I mean, unless he makes a really good burger, I don't know. The burger man drives him back, lets him see his girl one last time, goes and confronts Mr. Blake, scuffle, 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 gun goes off, police comes and get everyone. Cut to the courtroom where Jimmy has been explaining this story to the judge the entire movie. Apparently, his testimony, with virtually no evidence mind you, is enough to exonerate him, at least for the murder charges. The mafia connections, oh hell, guilty as charged. He gets house arrest until he turns 21, making him stuck with his parents for a couple more years. And then the judge just tells the parents, you guys suck, just as an extra jab to bring the movie home. This movie is entertaining from the fact that the stakes get raised in wild increments, solely due to Jimmy's lying. He wants no one to know about his home life, so he invents this complete fantasy about being in a loving home, which he basically tells everyone who will listen. Yet, every time he has to live in reality, it basically makes him mentally snap when everyone sweeps any of his accomplishments under the rug. Granted, he gets $35 from his parents whenever he does something good. Silver lining. $35 in the 1940s was like $8,000 today. Don't check that. But what I think the film needs work on is basically the quote-unquote dangerous side. Everything is basically on the up and up, so it really doesn't make sense there's a mob right underneath a very popular club. So here's what you do. You make the setting in burlesque. Burlesque was a tad shadier back in the day. It wasn't full stripping or anything like that, but there was an eye roll towards it as a form of entertainment. So if you keep everything the same, just change it to a seedier club. Kitty comes out, there are more tassels than Jimmy was expecting. She'll throw a couple of shimmy and shakes in the act, but now you have a darker world that innocent Jimmy falls into. Overall, I really enjoy I Accuse My Parents. As much as it tries to be a bit of a warning film, there really isn't enough real danger to make the point correctly. It's got a lot of that 1940s fast-talking dialogue. You are blazing through scenes, except you can't keep up with it the entire time. Visually, it's a little plain, but it's grounded in realism, so you can't expect much. But I think there's enough of a hook to it that it becomes enjoyable, without having to resort to a giant rubber costume. With all of that being said, I'm going to give I Accuse My Parents a 7 out of 10. But we are not done yet, as we now must start the Circulating the Tapes episode ranking chart. I think that's the best way to call this. Now we have 2 movies to add to this, as we did Racket Girls earlier in the year. I'll put a link in the episode description so you can give that show a listen. This one is a pretty easy choice. Which, as much as I like Racket Girls, which isn't that much, pro wrestling was very niche, especially in the 1950s. And when half of the movie is very plain wrestling moves and bumps, it's not great overall, especially when compared to I Accuse My Parents. Which means that Racket Girls will take our number 2 spot, and I Accuse My Parents is my number 1 MST3K episode of all time for now. And I'll say this, it might be there for quite a while. And that will do it for the first episode of Circulating the Tapes. If you have any comments on the movies watched, the ranking list itself, or even if you have a request on what episode you want me to cover, hit me up on the social media. I'm on X, Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Just Aewch, capital J-U-S-T, capital A-E-W-C-H. And don't forget to follow the show on Spotify. Give it a good rating. You can even leave a comment on there. It's called engagement, and Spotify keeps moving the goalposts. And for our next episode, I have some shows in the can, but I will add it to our ranking in a post show. But if you want to do a bit of hipster homework, find your Need for Speed, as we will be going over the Starfighters. But until then, push the button, ouch.
Wow, that was a sobering first half. Mom's a lush, Dad philanders, the son gets involved with a mob. Makes my occasional shouting match with my own parents over hedge trimming seem a little less important.